everybody. Thank you very much for coming to this meeting of the Warrant Committee. We are in full swing to review the budget for the town. We've had the presentation by the schools, and tonight we're going to have presentations, preliminary presentations for the DPW and the police. Erroneously, it was reported in the agenda that it would be the fire presentation, but Chief Grant was not able to come tonight, but Chief King is here to talk about the budget for the Milton Police Department. And Chief, if you're ready and able, we're happy to hear from you.
Okay, Kathleen.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Basically, I always just welcome questions. I don't want to waste your time talking about anything you don't have an interest in. But, we handle just under about 14,000 incidents a year. Some of them are serious, a lot of them are not so serious. But, the nature of our department is kind of a little bit unpredictable, but that tends to be a pretty steady number. The issues facing the department are probably things everybody in the community knows about. Traffic, huge problem in town, huge concern in town. Substance abuse, that's an issue in many different forums, calls for service specifically related to substance abuse, like drug overdoses, alcohol issues, stuff like that. It also permeates a lot of other calls, domestic violence, youth disturbances, car accidents, things like that. So, we have some serious crime. We have seen an increase in some homeless issues. I think I actually mentioned that last time. But we've seen kind of a growth in that, probably the nature of the economy and housing issues and stuff like that. So those are the types of issues we're dealing with, in addition to all the routine calls for service. I feel like the police, a lot of people turn to when they have no other avenue, so a lot of times we end up in the middle of other issues that maybe aren't normally police issues. But we staff our offices. We have a couple people working in the police station that we were able to obtain through grants that we have no town cost to. We have a domestic violence advocate. We have a mental health clinician. So I feel we have a lot of good programs going, and some of them aren't at the expense of the town. Basically, the budget itself, for specifics, the budget, the majority of it is salary and wages, because what we do is really just, it's labor costs. They make up about 92% of our budget. So there's only really about 8% that relates to other things, general expenses, new equipment, things like that. That 92% is salary. So when we try and make cuts or do issues or address things, it's really the personnel, the bodies that do the work. So it limits us a little bit, because there's no way to really shave costs on that short of either getting rid of people or reducing overtime, which in essence gets rid of people at certain times of the day or certain weeks. The other 8% is pretty much general expenses, new equipment, things that affect the daily administration of the department itself, cruisers, equipment, uniforms, standard operating costs. So it's my general overview, but I'm more than happy to detail anything specifically you want.
Questions for the Chief?
Quick question. I noticed that the maintenance costs are increasing, and I'm assuming that that's because you deferred purchase of a car. I think we talked about that last year. I think you
Under
took it out.
equipment maintenance?
Yeah.
We did defer a car last year. That might be an issue again this year, the way the budget is. But there's a lot of other things that, that isn't like necessarily vehicle maintenance. Vehicle maintenance actually comes under the DPW budget. It's not out of the police budget. This is a lot of things, and sometimes it spikes certain years just to something breaking or something. So out of that would be like, we pay for Smart 911, a service for residents to use that enhances their ability to put in personal medical information, stuff like that. CJIS, we have licensing agreements with the state, and we have to maintain certain computer systems. CJIS stands for like Criminal Justice Information System. Cameras is usually a big reason that might spike. We have cameras, and we could go a year with no maintenance issues. Another year, like a lot of ours, we're doing upgrades too. So when you have that, you might not just have the camera, but depending on where that camera is, you sometimes need antennas. So that tends to be a spike in certain years on that, and then it tends to go down. We have a system cross-match when a prisoner comes in. They're electronically fingerprinted to verify who they are. That's connected to a national database. That cross-match, there's maintenance agreements with that. that will pop up at different times. That at times could be $20,000, and then we might not have a cost for 5 years. So that's why sometimes maintenance spikes, but it's not vehicle equipment.
Okay, so the 84 that you're requesting for this new budget, you think that's sufficient?
I think it
Or
is
is it-
sufficient. You know, it's you know, a ballpark based on, they actually were here today looking at cameras and certain things that we know are kind of like our costly items. And we are currently upgrading some of them. Like I said, a lot of those are, you know, close to a decade old. But we think that will cover pretty much every expense related to maintenance.
And then so you deferred the auto last year, you're deferring the auto again this year, the car?
I am, but not necessarily by choice. You know, I was told I had to submit what I put
Right.
in for last year. So
Right.
last year, we had put in for 20, they asked us to reduce it to 2, so we reduced it. So
So.
having to put in the same request, I had to put it in for
Right,
2.
yeah. So I guess where I'm going is if the maintenance is in the DPW, is there a cost benefit for us to defer that, or should, I mean, I haven't looked that closely at the DPW, so in terms of maintenance on the cars, is that still a wise move?
You know, in fairness, I should include Chase in that conversation, only because, you know, it's his budget. I don't want to speak to his end. You know, my experience generally is, you know, if we defer cruisers, they come off the line more, they go to central maintenance more, so the maintenance costs do increase. The specifics of that increase, I'd have to respectfully defer to him.
Okay. So maybe we can take that offline. I'm just curious to see if, you know, we kicked it down the road last year, if we kick it down the road this year, are we paying just as much, if not more, in maintenance, or is that a
Yeah.
wise move?
Yeah, Chase could better answer that. My concern is also I lose that vehicle. So, you know, credit to them, they're very good about turning over the cars and getting them back
Right.
in as quick as possible. But that doesn't necessarily mean they can do it that day. Sometimes they have to wait for parts, sometimes it could be out of service. So my concern is I still lose that car.
Okay.
So, you know, instead of 3 cars, I still only have 2. You know, and if those 2 are getting more wear and tear and going to maintenance more, I've still lost a car even when they're in service. I have one less car.
Okay.
So even separate from the maintenance issue, my concern is the operation issue.
Doug, you had a question?
Yeah, it was along the lines of what you were saying. We had met before, and thank you for being here. I was wondering if you could explain, as you did with me during our meeting, how the cuts were going to affect your department, which is mostly going to be like vehicle replacement costs and things like that, how your cycle normally works, and the fact that we've already did defer it a year. You were explaining in detail before. If we keep doing it, it's going to just make your operations a lot more difficult.
Sure, we always
Yeah.
roughly got about 124,000, this is for new equipment.
Right.
And that just pays for vehicles and equipping them. So, you know, you go back, say about 6 years ago, when I was Deputy Chief, you could buy 4 cruisers for that expense, for that same 124. And, you know, there was never an increase, so we'd stay roughly 124, somewhere right around there. Just the purchasing power, because the cost of the vehicles, the cost of the equipment has gone up, that fell to about 3 cruisers several years ago. So we didn't get cut, but because we didn't get an increase, we kind of lost a cruiser. Now, last year, with a proactive cut, because of the tough budget situation, we fell to 2. So this would be another year of 2. So what happens is, you know, we're the only town department where vehicles do run 24 hours a day,
Yep.
365 days a year, even as much as the DPW and fire have vehicles, they don't run like that. So our line-marked vehicles are constantly being used. Within the 2-year span, they have well over 100,000 miles, and that's a hard 100,000. It's not necessarily the 100,000. You know, there's a lot of idling time, a lot of kind of, I don't want to say aggressive driving, but, you know, not normal driving conditions. So there's substantial wear and tear. We usually try and keep them for about 2 years as a primary line. We have 6 sectors. And then by having like 3 a year, every 2 years, we're replacing like half of them. So you're kind of rotating them. But after 2 years, we don't get rid of them. We tend to make them a spare car. So if people want assigned to a sector, if we have a traffic enforcement car, or we have a car doing a special assignment, they would then use them usually a couple more years. And then after that, if there's any life left to them, some of them get repainted, used by the police department. Some get, you know, repainted and given to, you know, the DPW for reading water meters or stuff like that.
So, as a follow-up, if we didn't have all the cuts and things like that, how many of your vehicles would you expect to need replacing in this budget cycle? And then, given a current state of our budget, how many can you expect to actually replace or what you need to do.
Yeah, ideally, we'd like to replace 3 marked vehicles
Yep.
in next year's budget. I mean, with this, it would be 2. You know, like I said, it's the vehicles in the 30-something thousand, and like equipping them, like we just got prices to equip 2 vehicles if we were to do it, and it was like 11,000 and change each vehicle. So that's where the cost now has just got up into the 40s. You know, there's a lot of equipment, a light bar, a cage
Yeah.
between the, you know, the officer and if there's a prisoner. Those things are usually a few $1,000s each, so the costs are substantial.
But you have it, so in this, you'd have at least 1 car that should be taken out of service and put in reserve, and you can't afford to do that. You gotta keep it in active service.
Correct.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the composition of the department, expected retirements, cadets that are coming up,
Sure.
and that sort of thing?
So we have 56 sworn members of the department. 55 are funded by the town, 1's funded by the school department, 1 of the school resource officers. But there's 56 sworn staff, there's civilian staff also. But basically, the majority of that, there's 13 in the supervisory ranks, there's 2 in the administration, myself and a deputy chief. There's 13 supervisors made up of lieutenants and sergeants, and there's 41 patrolmen. We have 7 cadets and 4 dispatchers. Their role is more the communication center. That communication center, just to note, doesn't just do police calls, it does all the fire and all the ambulance also, so there's only 1 communication center in town, and we staff it and budget it. And then there's a few administrative secretaries that do different work, you know, records, which is a very busy department now with the new public records law and stuff like that, and payroll and stuff like that, billing for details and stuff like that. Department, you know, the majority staffed as uniform patrol out on the street answering calls. You know, most are assigned to sectors. We do have some, you know, like we do traffic, community services type issues and stuff like that. A small number assigned to specialty jobs, detectives, court prosecutor, things like that. That's the general makeup of the department.
In terms of bringing in cadets, how is that undertaken?
So we
How do
just.
you recruit them, and what's the matriculation through the academy, et cetera?
So there's 2 types of hiring. We have police cadets, which is like a special program. Some departments have it, some don't. So we just, they do like dispatch, and they do work around the station, administrative tasks, stuff like that. So we run our own cadet exam for that. We just ran one in the first week of December.
How many candidates would apply for a position of that nature?
It varies. When I was a cadet, when I took it, you'd have 50 to 60.
Oh, wow.
The numbers are really down. We averaged in the 10 to 20 range.
That's what I was thinking.
It's substantially down. So we basically had in that range at this December exam. We just got our results. We interviewed 10 people within the last week. So 1 cadet left in October. There's another one we expect to leave. So we'll probably hire 1 immediately and 1 maybe in a couple months. A girl had just given us notice that she's going to be leaving in February. So that cadet program has a lot of turnover because there's an age limit by law. So 25, they have to go, even if they're a good employee and you don't want them to go, they have to go. That just happened to a kid who left in October. So that's cadets. Separate from that, some of those cadets advance to be police officers. Some don't, depending on time and exam results and civil service lists. As far as hiring for police officers, we basically are regulated by civil service. It's very restrictive. We call the state, they send us a list. We have to go by that list. And, you know, we can skip somebody, but only for certain reasons, a background failure, things like that. It doesn't give us a lot of discretion on who we pick on the list.
What's the turnover at that level, Chief?
You know, if you call
Average.
for a list, it's probably a few weeks just for them to sign the list. You have to wait up to 3 weeks. Then you start processing them. That includes background investigations, usually a few weeks. You have to have a medical exam. You have to have a PAT, which is a physical exam, a psychological exam. You have to get a spot in a police academy. You know, that's hit or miss depending on where you go.
And how many would come in each year on average in that way?
Last year, we tried to hire 6. We lost 1. So we got 5. We currently have 2 we need to hire. There's a police academy we're hoping to get spots in April. We've contacted them, and they're supposed to get back to us, but we're unconfirmed whether we'll get those spots or not. If we don't in that, we'd have to look for another one. So it takes usually several months, up to 6 months after you decide to hire to actually pick the person, and then 6 more months is the police academy. So it takes basically a year.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that long. Do you feel the staffing levels are sufficient for, I mean, I think I know the answer to this one, for sufficient for the day-to-day operation if there were a catastrophic event?
I do.
Would we be able to staff that and to attend to it and to meet the need? I'm trying to think of something that would be really awful, but something that required all hands on deck sort of a thing.
I do. I think if we had a natural disaster, or we had, you know, an active shooter or something like that, I mean, we don't have 57 employees in the building, you know, at all times, you know. But I think we have an adequate response. The key to that, like any department or agency, is all like agreements you have with other agencies for mutual aid and stuff like that. We have agreements with all the neighboring communities. We're part of a regional response team. You know, we pull people from, you know, special assignments. If something critical happened, there might be 6 officers assigned to, you know, patrol response tomorrow, but if something serious happened, you know, we pull people who are in administrative jobs, the person who might be doing the gun licensing or the, you know, grants or things like that, we would just pull them. We have also, you know, Chuck Caputo's in charge of the LEPC, which is a local emergency, like the Milton Emergency Planning Group, and there's automatic notifications to everybody to respond and stuff like that. So I think we would handle it fine.
John, do you have a question?
Chief, I would like to just acknowledge you had some good stories saving that runner, your men.
Thank you.
Congratulations, that's a great story. And I think the gentleman on Robin Street, the policeman helped that man with the fireman. 2 great stories,
Thank you.
saving lives.
Thank you. Yeah, you
It
know,
does matter.
I appreciate that. Credit to not me, but the people
Well, you're men and
who
women.
work there, right?
Those 2
Exactly.
great stories.
Yeah, thank you. They do a good job, and those are just show you unpredictable. That's like, you know, casual road
I'm sure you hear
racing.
about bad, but this is a couple of good things.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I saw, I'm Scott Johnson, I live in Hillside Street, and you guys did an amazing job in front of my house with a hostile person, just restrained yourselves unbelievably well, so professionally handled.
I appreciate it, Scott. I actually remember you emailing me. We hadn't met, but I remember your email.
I was blown away by that. It was really amazing how hostile the person was, how crazy they were, but how amazingly controlled your guys were. They were just phenomenal.
Thanks, I appreciate that. You know, I really can't stress this enough, like, both your comments, 100% credit to, like, the men and women who are out there doing it. Like, they have a hard job, like I have an easy job. Like, it's tough to deal with people in emotional states, it's tough to deal with unpredictable events, and, you know, the best, like, I can do on my end is we try and make sure we train them well, and have good policies, and, you know, credit to the department. We do a lot of those, you know, crisis intervention training, we do a lot of de-escalation training, we do the things to try and prevent these things from, you know, going in the other direction, escalating to a use of force, or, you know.
Aaron, you had a question.
I have a couple questions, Mr. Chair. The ed incentive pay, can you tell me what that is? Is that people that have a higher education?
Yeah, exactly. So years ago, the
Quinn
state,
bill.
yeah, the
bill?
state used to have a Quinn bill. It's technically not the Quinn bill. It got changed in 2009.
All right.
Yeah.
The governor's office, Governor Patrick,
Patrick.
reformed that. And at the time, the unions negotiated with the town for like an alternative plan. But in essence, they get paid more. The old plan was 10,
They have a higher
20.
degree, correct?
They have a higher degree, yeah.
And the administrative department, only one person is receiving that ed initiative pay. I'm just curious to know if there's any plan for those folks to try and get a higher education?
So it would only apply to sworn personnel.
Okay,
So
thank you for
most of
that.
those people, when you look at that column,
Yep.
the only other sworn that it doesn't appear in is me.
Okay.
But, you know, I
The
always,
rest of them they wouldn't even count.
they don't even
Perfect.
qualify. In mine, you know, I'm a contractual employee, I just negotiated separate with the towns. I used to get it, in fairness and
Right.
honesty, up until I became chief. And in essence, it's factored into my pay.
Okay, thank you for that. Can I want to ask a couple questions about the diversity of the department. So can you tell me how many people of color are currently employed out of all of the patrolmen?
Just give me 1 second, I can. Five,
5 out of 41?
correct.
And out of the cadets that are currently with you, how many of those are people of color?
Excuse me, two.
2, okay. Is there anything that?
2 out of 6.
2 out of 6. Is there anything that the department is doing to increase the diversity within the department? Including, I can figure who is a woman, but
Sure.
based on their names, although you never know these days, given some names, but I'm just curious to know if there's a plan in place for the department to increase the number of women that are patrolmen, increase the number of, people of color that are currently employed within Milton to reflect the diversity of the town.
Sure. Very difficult to do.
I believe it.
Used to be easier. So when I was an officer, you could call, and even when I was a sergeant lieutenant, you could call civil service and say,
Right.
Can you give us a preferential list, meaning only people who speak Spanish or
Yeah.
only,
Exactly.
Asian person, or only, you could give specific requests.
Right.
You can no longer do that. There's been a multitude of lawsuits throughout the state.
I believe it.
So we are given a civil service list, that's it.
Just grades, basically, what
Yeah,
they scored on their
and
test.
You can't
Basically
skip,
take the
you
top
can't
of the
factor
list.
in race, you can't factor
Nothing.
in sex, you get the list. So the only potential avenue that we have around that
Yeah,
would be the cadet program.
okay.
Because the cadet program would allow you to pick 1 out of every 3 without going by the list.
I see what and you've already done that, it seems, so,
We have, but we also lose people too. You could be we had a cadet, a year ago that was, had his time in and could have came on here, and he got hired by Boston.
more money,
Yeah,
probably.
they have big-
He was a minority. We have a minority cadet right now that's being screened by 2 police departments.
Okay,
So, it's a constant battle. I actually had a half-hour phone call with somebody in Milton today about this issue.
oh, did you really?
Yeah, so it's, you're limited, so you really just
Yeah.
gotta market your cadet program, but this is still your best-case scenario, 33%.
Right,
So
exactly.
you gotta market your cadet program to get more minority and female applicants to load up that pool.
Right.
So when you go to that 1/3 pool,
You have more.
a lot there.
Exactly.
But when you go to the civil service list, if
It's just
the top
scores.
30 are white males, that's your top 30.
Okay.
A town like Milton, where you hire maybe a couple a year, you don't get through that list. You tend to only get the top. The top is dominated by veterans because of an absolute veteran preference.
Okay, all right, thank you. I only have 2 more quick questions. What are traffic supervisors? Are those the crosswalk folks?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you for that. And by any chance, do you know, and I don't know that you would know this answer, but do you know the acreage that the police department currently sits on? The
building
acreage
lot,
of, yeah.
I don't.
Do you know who would? Would Chase know that, or would the town know
Consolidated
that?
facility.
Facilities?
I believe you, I could probably just go on the town GIS mapping and
Yeah.
click it, and it probably would show it.
Okay,
on
thank
the
you for
website.
telling me that. All
Yeah, the
right.
town has a GIS map, and if you hit it, there's a land that shows you the land measurements.
Okay, thank you so much.
Scott, you had a question.
I was just gonna say that it's roughly 12% people of color on the current force, and you got 33% in the cadet class. So in essence, you're making an effort to do,
Yeah.
Yes.
to equal. Do you know how many percent minorities are in the town?
I just know the school.
15% African American.
I know the school statistics.
So that, but I don't know the,
Milton?
yes, in Milton, but I don't know how it breaks down beyond that for Hispanic, Latino,
Asian.
Asian.
I'm just trying to get a feel of what the
It's why, it's out of sync.
I thought roughly, but I wouldn't want to be quoted on this, I thought it was about 23% of all, minority groups mixed together. The only list you can still call for, I just want to clarify with civil service, but I tried this about 2 years ago, but we don't meet the standards, is while you can't call for a sex or race-based, you can call for a language-based, but they've changed the criteria. You used to be able to say, so in Milton, my experience, we have a lot of Haitian Creole speaking. You
Right.
could call and say, we have a need for Haitian Creole, and they would give that 10 years ago.
Right.
Today, they'll say, give us data showing the
That you
exact
need it.
number of Haitian Creole translations
That you've
that you
done.
needed, in the last X number of years. And if they don't find your data
Right,
suitable,
right.
you don't get it. And what's hard on that is, if you go to a house and you're at a domestic and,
Right.
you reach out to an officer, one of our own, we're lucky we have some officers that speak languages, or a neighboring community, or we use translation line services through the phone and stuff like that. It's a domestic, or you arrest a prisoner, you're gonna do, all those translations are gonna be documented very well. The problem is, you know, somebody calls and they're arguing with the neighbor on a minor thing, or there's a disabled motorist, you might have an issue where the officer couldn't speak to the person.
Right.
But those aren't documented as, like, you're not gonna call Randolph and say, can you send somebody all the way down here to translate on a disabled vehicle?
Right.
So you
Right.
lack that data that then civil service
Would
wants from you.
require.
So
And there's no
it's like a-
guarantee either, though. I mean, Doug
Right.
could speak Haitian Creole for all we know. I mean, there's no guarantee that, you
It's
know.
possible.
I mean,
Yeah.
you can speak Cantonese. I mean, there's,
Yeah.
you know, 100 different, people take languages all the time, so that doesn't,
Right. They test them. You can give them a test if you're on that list, you know, that verifies it.
Yeah, all right.
But am I right, just to tie a bow on this, a lot of this is a pipeline issue, right? And it's based on the civil service list, and there's really not much more you can do beyond that.
Scott, yeah, go ahead.
Him.
Doug. He's Scott, you're Doug.
We have a part-time parking enforcement or traffic enforcement officer
Yes.
that's relatively new, right?
First year.
Yeah, can you tell us how well that's going? How many citations?
Very well. So he would have just started under this budget, so we're
Yeah.
we're only about 6 months into it. He would have started July. By the time he got hired, it was more like September, because there was another gentleman who was interested, but then the hours didn't work. He also did it in another community and was trying to balance the two. It didn't work. So again, we got a different person hired. You know, we lost maybe half of August and the month of July. But he's working good, so he basically reports to Lieutenant Alba, who oversees like all traffic issues in town. And, you know, obviously the business districts, the obvious places, and then separate from that, you know, credit to Mike Dennehy, he's very hands-on with citizen complaints and issues he deals with at meetings. He relays them to Mark Alba, who assigns this individual to go target certain areas. We had a lot parking on streets down by the trolley line, the trolley in Boston, stuff like that. So, you know, we flex his hours and we flex his days so that people don't know when he's working, basically. You know,
That's genius.
Yeah.
you know, keep it fluid. So he does about 80 a month tickets, but, you know, he's only here 19 hours. But he's doing about 80 tickets a month in those 19 hours.
So what?
Yeah, it's, well, yeah, exactly. So, you know, there is some downtime because you move and, you know, if you have a 2-hour zone, you know, you do it, you're not riding the T, you gotta come back 2 hours later. So, you know, there's sometimes it's like, depends on what you're enforcing, you know what I mean? As opposed to a no parking area, you could have 10 minutes, you know what I mean? But, I mean, I think he's working well in the sense he's dealing with issues. I think, you know, there's been more turnover in the business areas, which was one of the reasons for it. There's been a reduction in some of the problem areas along the trolley and places like that. And then, you know, there's still, the officers separate from that also write parking tickets, you know, like overnight parking complaints we get. You know, certain neighborhoods are more dense than others and stuff, so we have issues with that. So, you know, a lot of those are still done by the regular officers too on their patrol.
Kathy?
Yeah, actually, I was kind of going in the same avenue. This particular position was new last year, and when we talked about the budget, he or she was supposed to cover the cost of the budget. Do you know if that's in fact happening? or-
Yeah, he is on pace to beyond the cost of what we've paid him in salary, yes.
Okay.
The only variable I always like to caveat is, you know, somebody could appeal a ticket.
Yep.
You know, things like
Right.
that. The town pays a small processing fee to the company that, you know, processes the tickets and things like that. So you gotta factor in all those other costs, but generally, yes.
Yeah, okay. And then lastly, on the overtime. So there's a sizable amount, I think it's a little over 400,000 for
Yeah.
overtime. I noticed in fiscal 19, your salary line was about $12,000 under budget. Where do you think you're landing this year for fiscal 20? And is that much needed in overtime to cover the vacant positions?
Yeah, you know, we have less vacancies now because of the hiring last year, so we have less vacancies, but, you know, when we had 6 vacancies, that was a lot we were spending, but in addition to the overtime, you also had those salaries, because we were funded those positions, we just couldn't hire people, it took, you know, the year to
Yeah.
hire. So your overtime actually ended up being more, because you also had their salaries.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Where now, we have the overtime, but the salary spots are filled, so there's no real surplus. I guess there's 2 vacancies now that we're trying to fill. But we're on pace. I mean, we do a weekly check of all the budget and the overtime stuff, so we're on
Okay.
pace to essentially be right on it. You know, we're busy up in the fall. Towards the end of the year, people have to use up all their time by December 31st. So there's a lot of people out up to basically New Year's. this time of the year, January, February, March, tends to be far less people out, so usually these few months, we'll save some money,
Right.
short of, the unforeseens, Extended Family Medical Leave Act or things like that. And then the spring, people start taking their time again, and it picks back up again.
So I had seen an article in the Milton Times, and it was top 10 or top 20 people's salaries in the town, just state salaries, and then I had, subsequent to that, it was salaries plus overtime. And I was surprised to see so many police officers and lieutenants that fell in that category. And just a quirky thing with numbers, but I actually started to look at them, and some of them were sizable, like increases in salary with with overtime was like 40% more.
Yeah.
And I was kind of surprised at that. So is there a way that you can distribute overtime so that it goes to not just the top salary cops versus, some of the newer people who are making less, so that your dollar goes further?
Well, two issues on that. One is, I remember that article, but I think when they say overtime, they're counting overtime and details. And I just want to clarify that,
Okay.
because, that doesn't necessarily mean they made 40,000 of town overtime. That could have been 10,000 of town overtime and 30,000
30.
of private details. So,
Okay.
I think they put the two in because it's processed through town checks, even if it's a
Yep.
private vendor. That being said, a lot of them are very high salaries. A lot of those people, in fairness to them, I think work a ton of hours. So, I kind of understand where it comes by, because some of those people I see in the building 80 hours a week. But as far as distribution, the whole thing is, one is, that's controlled by the union.
Okay.
And, the whole thing in the union, I think, is doing the right thing. It's a fairness thing. So they have a rotating list, but, my variable is, I hire based on the rank I need.
Yep.
So, if I'm filling a patrol spot, I fill it with a patrolman. I don't call in a lieutenant, who would cost a lot more.
Okay.
But in terms of which patrolman, I can't say,
Can't do
well,
that.
hire the kid with the step 1 who started 6 months ago. Don't hire the person who is step 10 because they've been here 20 years.
Right.
The union says, we track and it rotates. So today it's her, tomorrow it's him. Sometimes it costs me less, sometimes it costs me more. But I can't change that with, I got to work within the union, I can't change laws and keep that on pace. So there isn't really a way for me to pick and choose to save money.
Yep.
But I will say a large portion of those salaries in that were on details. And I still know there's sometimes like a bad PR with that. People, I don't know, whatever reason, don't like the police making that much. But, and I don't do details, mine's just my regular work. But I'll say in fairness, like, a lot of them work a lot of hours. It's still time away from the family, stuff like that. And I feel in many ways the town benefits by having Milton officers on the street. I can tell you a number of cases where those officers with radios and uniforms fully equipped responded to calls for service, where we had cruisers timed up. They would jump in their own car and go to calls or help out, things like that. So, that basically.
Do we still?
John? Oh, I'm sorry.
John.
I- you know.
A couple weeks ago, a Norwood policeman retired, and they still cross church pedestrians. They had a big party for him, and I think the 10:30 mass for him. He retired that Sunday. And the only thing I'm asking for, maybe on Christmas Eve, you could have the police at the churches, for the 4 o'clock mass.
Announces?
Yeah, because it's dark when you come out. You know what I mean? Randolph Ave's bad, I'm sure St. Agatha's, and there's a lot of town people there. In St. Mary's, I don't know if they do the 4 o'clock mass now, do they?
Oh, yeah, they do.
And St. Pius is on a side street. But just something like that, it's real dark
Yeah.
when you get out at that
Yeah,
mass.
right, just talk early. Yep.
If we could have some type of.
If you're gonna do it for one sect of churches,
Oh, and I'd have to
I
do
mean,
all of
you'd
them.
have to do all of them, let's just put that out there,
Yeah, I was
because
gonna say
that's not,
Oh, that's true.
No, I get that, yeah.
you can't just do the Catholic churches.
No.
Christine?
So I feel like I should know this, and I apologize. We get a portion of the private detail money as the town, right?
10%.
10%. Where is that recorded? Or does it not go to your police budget, does it go to the general budget?
It goes to general fund, but this budget is like expenses,
It's just
that would be an
expenses.
intake.
Okay,
In other words, that's a revenue, there's no revenues in this
okay.
budget. But it goes to the general fund. But
Roughly how much do we get annually?
I'd say, I'm ballparking, I thought it was in the high 1 millions last year, so,
Really?
Well, no, not revenue, so you'd get 10% of that.
I see. That's surprising. I was like, I think we
No,
have
we-
an
we
idea.
good,
I understand.
So if we build, I'm just saying it was 1.8 million or something, you'd get 180.
180, got it. Thank you.
But the treasurer's office would have to answer.
Gotcha.
Same with like the parking tickets, all that, I don't see the end revenues, like I said, somebody might appeal it,
Right.
somebody may end up with late fees, like, those are the things beyond the station.
Understood.
And they all go to general fund, you know, if somebody goes to court and ends up paying court costs on some fee, you know, Quincy Court sends a check to the town, but we're never notified, but the treasurer's office will.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Just one last question.
Please.
Who sets the rates for those details?
Also controlled by the union, it's
Oh.
time and a half to top step patrolman.
Okay, because, I mean, we're talking about expenses, but we're also looking at revenue sources, so is that something that can be increased?
Well, it depends on the demand for the private detail, I would
We're all
imagine.
paying for those details, no matter how you look at it. The tax, it gets passed on to the customer.
Everything gets passed on.
I understand, but we're all gonna pay more.
Okay.
Does the state have a requirement of retirement age for people employed in the police department? I honestly don't know, and I just don't know.
They do in municipalities, so
do.
cities and towns, 65.
It is 65.
But
Okay.
no age in, like, if you were the state police, there's no age limit.
And what about administratively? Is there any age limit that they would have to retire? Like if a dispatcher?
No.
They could work until
If you're a
they're-
dispatcher, if you're one of the secretaries, there's no age limit. It would apply, an age limit applies to me, because I'm considered a sworn officer.
Okay.
So anybody who's a sworn officer, it's 65, cadets, 25.
Huh,
But anyone else, there'd be none.
okay, thanks. I just didn't know.
Anybody else? Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. We're grateful for your effort and the forces as a whole. We're happy now to hear from Chase Berkeley, who is the director of the DPW for the town, keeping everything rolling.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the
Okay.
committee, thank you
There we
for
go.
having me.
Thank you for coming.
So, I'd just like to brief overview of the department, then I can go through. So DPW is
Oh, there it is, I got it.
somewhat unique amongst the other town budgets to review because we also oversee the 3 enterprise funds. So there's in total 7 different budgets that kind of all contribute to the functions we provide. So for purposes of tonight, we'll discuss the ones that relate to the tax levy and usually come back later in the process to go over enterprise and the effects that that budget will have on rates for utility bills, water, sewer, and stormwater. So when it comes to what you have presented, the town administration asked us to provide 2 budgets. So the first one is a level-funded budget with contractual increases in costs, and the second budget is a minus 3% budget from FY '20 plus contractual costs. So those are the 2 scenarios we presented. So when it comes to personnel and salary and wages, all of our collective bargaining agreements expired at the end of FY '19. They're still in negotiations. So what we've done is submitted a level fund wage request, and there's a set-aside article that will cover the collective bargaining increases once they're ratified.
Chase, how many unions do you have to
There are 3 in
negotiate?
DPW.
3?
Yeah. And just another reminder on our salary and wages. So only 38% of the salary and wages are funded through the tax levy, and the rest of that percentage is through the enterprise funds. So cutting our salary and wages and overtime doesn't have the same effect as it does in other departments, because it's only 38% of each dollar that actually gets cut when we do that. So the department is 41 full-time employees, one shift, Monday through Friday. All outside of that is either scheduled or emergency overtime. And so the other 3 categories that we break down the budget into are the general, DPW general vehicle maintenance, snow and ice, and solid waste. So I'll just run through those one by one. So DPW general, which also covers our engineering and Conservation Commission costs. The impact to the 3% cut would have is we applied it to what we call payment to contractors line, which is somewhat of a contingency item because we don't necessarily know what damages may occur and what we might need to repair, but we typically use that to do smaller reactive paving work and preventative tree maintenance and along those lines. So we just reduced that amount, so we basically provide less of that service with the reduced amount. We get into vehicle maintenance, and I'll just touch on the questions about the police vehicles. So deferring a new vehicle purchase does two things. It increases the average age of the fleet, so the likelihood of maintenance will need to occur goes up, and it also takes away a car that would be on warranty. So if you don't buy that new car, you don't have a vehicle covered by warranty, and you have one more that isn't, the vehicle maintenance budget will have to cover the cost for repairs. So that's basically the effect of any kind of deferring, and that goes for our vehicles as well as police. And so the vehicle maintenance budget, along the same lines, we just reduced our supplies line item by a 3% cut to cover that reduction, which means we can buy less supplies and do less preventative replacement. And you know, we all know that sometimes it's penny wise, pound foolish, because we're just deferring those costs later, and they tend to become bigger when you do that. So snow and ice is one that we didn't cut, and there's a very specific reason for that, because the Commonwealth allows you to defer your deficit in a year to the following year if you need to. It's the only thing that you're allowed to do that with in municipal budgets. DPW always runs a deficit in snow and ice. We budget currently $160,000 for the year. Our 5-year average is $715,000. So every year we know we need about $500,000 to make up going into the year. So what that does is that it tends to have us control our costs through the winter and then try to make up the spring either to use that surplus or, you know, reduce further so that the deficit doesn't grow even more and need to go to reserve funds or ask other departments to cover. And then finally, solid waste, which we all know is a special town meeting. We had to go back this year and get revised appropriations. So at the end of FY19, all of our contracts for solid waste expired, and we renewed them and executed them. So the jump from FY19 to FY20 was very substantial, upwards of 60% cost increases. And there are several factors that play into that. Global markets is one. We were coming off a 5-year contract that was severely discounted from a very unique circumstance because of the contractor that we had and his situation with the city of Boston. So basically that hauling cost kind of realigned with market value. It had been severely discounted for 5 years. And at the same time as that, the prices for disposals of recycled goods and solid waste went up significantly. So we kind of all hit at once. We got a major increase FY19 to FY20. Thankfully, with those contracts executed, it's a much more modest increase for this budget. So it's basically a cost of living increase in solid waste, 2.5% to 3% this round.
And we should expect that
That's
same
through
level of
FY22. Yeah,
increase.
those contracts are all 3 years. So one thing that was important for us was to get off the same bidding schedule as the city of Boston, because we found we were basically held hostage for pricing until the city settled its contracts, which pushed us right to the 11th hour at the end of the year. We didn't have contracts in place till the week before the year turned, and we couldn't get pricing until the city's contracts were signed because the collection facilities just wouldn't give in pricing till they took care of the big one.
So we have a 1.9, what I've calculated, a 1.9% increase year on year for next year.
For solid waste?
Yes.
Yeah.
The total for all.
Yes.
Okay.
So that kind of oversees, runs through everything. Just a note on the solid waste too. So we implemented the trash barrel program and the trash barrel bill.
Yeah.
So year to date, we've actually collected $100,000 more than we did all of last year. So that program was successful. We're already ahead of where we were a year ago by a substantial amount. So we hope to see that continue, obviously. And that was a good success. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
John, please.
I have a lot of questions. I don't know if this is the right place. I read the Globe Sunday, so Wasteman is locked in with the recyclables, right?
Yeah, we have a 3-year contract.
Never
with them.
go up, because they said if a lot of communities opt out, they're gonna go up on all their contracts that they got now.
Yes, we have fixed pricing through FY '22.
But if they have communities that get out in the globe, Waste Management said that they're gonna go up on the remaining communities. If you noticed that, I'm sure you read it about the western part of the state.
Right.
It's real bad. It's really caught up to them. And they're looking to get out of it. It's costing $150 a ton just to get rid of recyclables.
Right, yeah, so our price is $95 a ton currently. It goes up into 97 next year, and then 100. So we have contractual prices through FY '22. When we renew is the potential for that increase to really hit us.
They have they can never go up on this contract right now.
Right, yeah, they're fixed, yeah. And the problem is there's no market value for recyclables. So we used to make some money on the goods. Right now, we're getting maybe $1 or $2 a ton to process that. So there's basically zero value for what we're recycling. And that value comes off of our price to process it, so.
Second
What
question.
caused the value to come down?
So it's,
I didn't hear the question.
What caused the value to come
What caused the
down?
value?
There's no one wants it.
well, yes, it's more of a macro
Chinese
problem.
buying it.
It's a
that
global problem.
The
Sitting on docks.
commodity values that,
Too much supply.
there's a couple of reasons. Supply has been pretty constant, how much goods are being produced. The tolerances that, mainly China is the receivable entity of recycled goods, and their tolerances for contamination in the product we sent over went way up. So you used to be able to put 5 to 10% contamination in, it went down to sometimes 0.5%. So that it had to be very clean material to ship over there, which drove up the processing side. And we had to be very good about sorting it before it went on a boat to go over to China. And it just became much more expensive because of that.
How much salt have we gone through?
I don't have the tonnage off the top of my head, but we typically use about 60 to 70 tons per storm to salt the whole town. And we've been out probably half a dozen times. So we could certainly provide that number. We have records of what we've bought.
And you do the whole side streets and
We
everything?
do every street, yeah, which I know was a change from previous years before I was here, but that's the policy now. All roads get done.
Right. And now, you're DPW director, right?
Yes.
He drives around in a four-door Explorer. Today I saw him with tinted windows, and it was clear through. Last week you could see him. Today he's in a tinted window Ford Explorer, the same car. All right?
Yeah.
And you're going up in your stormwater rates, and people are struggling to pay these bills, and they'd all like to have a nice brand-new four-door Explorer. And I don't think tinted windows for the DBW director's the right way to go. I couldn't even look into them.
Right, yeah, so that, you think that's a new change? I'll look into that, John, I
It's a
wasn't
new
aware of that.
change,
Yeah.
Chase.
Okay, yeah.
I don't
I'm
go
happy to
looking
look
for
into
this.
that.
I have an X amount of customers throughout this town. And I'm all over this town every day of the week.
Yeah, understood.
And
Perception
when
is
he
reality.
came
Yep.
from Norwood, he always drove a pickup truck. Why does he have to drive a four-door Explorer, 2 years old? That job always, man that had that job would stop, pick up brush, pick up trash. I don't understand why he had to get a four-door Explorer.
Yep, so that vehicle was purchased 2 years ago, and I'd be happy to look into that for you and have an offline discussion.
Could
if
see
you'd
right
like.
through
Yep.
a week ago. Now it's tinted windows. I don't even think it's legal tint.
Yeah,
I don't see the rhyme or reason for that.
yeah, I understand, yeah.
And I don't even know why he's in a four-door Explorer. Should be in a pickup truck. So if he sees a brush on the road, he can pull over and pick it up. When he worked for Norwood, he was in a pickup truck.
Yeah. Okay, be happy to look into that for you, John.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? With the 3%, if we have to do a 3% decrease, where would you be cutting?
So I basically put it into single lines just for simplicity in the budget process, but these are bottom line budgets, and we have the ability to flex where we spend the money in between certain lines. So I might say we need $50,000 for tree planting, but I have the ability to reduce that if I need to increase something else. So for simplicity, we reduce the big ticket items in the budget.
Okay.
So that's payment to contractors, supplies for vehicle maintenance.
But a 3% decrease would not jeopardize basic services, you don't
It
think?
would never jeopardize it. It'll just reduce our capacity to be proactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's something I think we all want to avoid, so.
These type of decreases would not cut into our ability to provide the services. It would just limit us on how proactive we can be.
As you look forward and project out 2 years, 3 years, where are the greatest needs that you can see at this point that we should start to think about? Or
Yes,
where
so-
we need to plan, I should
Yes, so
say.
typically, DPW needs come in the form of capital requests.
Yeah.
They tend to be expensive, and certainly transportation and traffic is a major driver now. You know, we've invested, and thank you for the previous approvals, in a lot of our signal equipment. But there's a lot of stuff coming through the pipeline, that a newly formed traffic mitigation committee that's come up with some great recommendations on how we can kind of look at regional transportation and what improvements we can make. So I think you see some requests along those lines, continued requests in the traffic and transportation. Roadways is always a huge ticket item for us. We need to pave more roads. We have a $20 million deficit in our paving program. And, you know, we're basically able to fund $1 to $2 million a year.
Is state aid available for that at any level?
So we get the Chapter 90 funds, which we
Right.
appropriate every town meeting, but it's not adequate for our, you know, our needs. So our average age of road is creeping older and older as time progresses. We're not able to keep up with the need.
How do you prioritize the
Yeah.
paving?
So a lot of it has to do with utility work. So when we go into a street, replace a water main, a sewer line, we coordinate the gas company to come in and do their work, and then we pave the street at the end so that it doesn't have to be disturbed once we do it. So utility drives a lot of it. Residential requests are taken into consideration. We have a pavement inventory done for the entire town, which scores every road based on its condition. So we know where all roads kind of relate to the other roads in town and where the worst of the worst is.
In the best of all possible worlds, what would be the progression of repair to maintain as similar a road bed throughout the town as possible?
So, depending on a road's condition, how to repair it changes, and it gets more expensive the worse the road is. So when you read through the literature and the science behind roadway repair, you're better off spending your money on keeping your new roads new, and maintaining and preserving their life, and that's where you maximize your dollars. So, you know, after you pave a road in that 5-year window to do some of the preventative maintenance to keep that road in a newer condition really pays off in the long run.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, on that same, can you tell me where I can find those numbers in this budget? Like, what department is it under?
So that's all typically capital requests, which aren't
Oh,
part of,
it's
these are
separate.
operational costs, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, we're $20 million in, basically, we need to put out $20 million to keep our roads
So-
up. What's the plan here?
Yeah, so $20 million would bring every road in town up to a satisfactory level, which just, you know, isn't realistic, you know,
No.
with our constraints, so.
No, obviously, but what's our,
So
what's
our plan is
long-term
to
plan?
continue to follow our utility work and pave roads where their condition warrants. It's so bad that we need to do them. But, you know, in the paving world, $1 million is a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money. It doesn't get us a lot of miles of paving. We try to max, so a lot of the newer roads you see in town are newer technology, so we did some what we call microsurfacing in the Sumner and Truro area a couple of years ago, which is basically a thin overlay with some rubberized material that help preserve it from cracking. So we're exploring the newer technologies. There's a lot of
That's cool.
advantages out there to stretch those dollars. We have to look to those kind of alternative methods because the traditional rebuilding of roads is very expensive. And a lot of the cost of doing roadway work is actually bringing sidewalks into compliance for ADA.
Yes.
So that has a significant percentage. You know, you can't just pave a road anymore. You need to bring all the sidewalks into wheelchair compliance. So
Yep.
that's a big component of those costs.
What percentage of the town is not in compliance with that?
So again,
Provision.
it varies by area. So pretty much anything done within the last 10 years is in compliance, but percentage-wise, it's not a high number. You know, there's a lot of roads that don't have sidewalks, but just, you know, the kind of the crux is that when we go in and pave a road, there's a tremendous amount of sidewalk work that comes with it, which shrinks our length of road we can work on.
Really high
John.
curb.
Mr. Berkeley, I just want to tell you, you got a good workforce. They work very
Absolutely.
hard.
Thank you for that.
Men and
yeah.
women.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
And they plow very good. They always did good plowing in this town anyways.
Oh, yeah.
2015 was tough. The poor people were sleeping on the steering wheels in the trucks, and they had junk.
Well, that
They've
was a rough
updated
year
with
for everyone.
a nice
Tough winter.
equipment, and they do a good job. I have no issues with your rank and file, they're hardworking people, all right? But I would like the list that the Copelands paid for the town. And I would
List
like
of,
to see the equipment.
Donations?
No, they bought you a loader.
Yep, two. yeah.
John did, no, I
Yep.
think just one, right? They bought a sidewalk machine with the mowing. They bought 2 Bobcats with snow blowers. I would like a tour of that equipment to make sure it's still there,
Sure, yeah.
all right? But
Yeah, I can reach out to them and find out all the equipment they donated. And it was a significant donation following the
they
2015
gave you a
winter.
wing plow, which I was against for the loader, it was never used, but I would like to see the equipment and the status of it. There was quite a bit of donated equipment,
Yeah, no, we're very, very grateful for all that.
but I want to your workforce is great and they do good work.
Thank you for that, yep.
Other questions? Chase, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Keep up the good work and good luck with the storms, et cetera.
It was delightful. Come in.
That was the gas company, yeah.
Oh, was it? Good meeting.
So at our next meeting, which we will call, we said was going to be on the 28th? 27th, sorry, of January. 27th of January. I'll report back to you on conversations I'll have with the select board about proposals for revenue generation through pilot. There was a conference call that I had with Mike Dennehy and the chair of the select board and Tony Farrington, who was here at our last meeting. And one thing that I proposed, and I'm interested to have the feedback of this committee, is to invite the president of Curry College, the headmaster of Milton Academy, and the president of Milton, BID Milton, to come and talk to us about their ideas of pilot and how grateful we are for the payments they have made and how grateful we'll be for the payments we expect them to make. And I just want the input of this group if you think it's a good idea. I mean, we can invite them. I don't know if they'll show, but I just want to know what you are all thinking about that. Yes, Chris.
So first I'll say, I sit on one of the boards for BID Milton, so I think I have to recuse myself of any conversation with regard to them specifically. As a general matter, I see no harm in doing so as long as we, well, one question is timing with regard to when this op-ed is going to be published in the Times. Does that come before or after such a meeting? But the other is I think it's important to think about how to make it productive. I mean, they've been talking to the pilot subcommittee for a long time. I think it would be a waste of everybody's time if we essentially ask them the same things that they've already been asked. And I think we need to think about how does this committee most productively talk to them about pilot program and the town. I don't know what that looks like, but I do think that it's important that we use the time wisely.
I don't disagree. I think that's a very good suggestion. Doug?
No, I'll just reiterate, I would think might be a better use of time if we ask for a small delegation to sit in a joint meeting with the pilot committee of the select board. Meet with them instead, rather than have them come here just to say everything that they've already talking with them about.
Okay.
Makes sense.
I agree with Doug. A smaller working session might be more productive.
I mean, one of the objectives clearly is to encourage them to come up with the cash that has been requested. You know, Curry is the only one at this point. Milton Academy paid also, but it was kind of a wash with the abatement that they received. So, yeah, they gave us money, but they were going to do it anyway. So, I mean, it's nice, but it wasn't enough.
Ideally, we'd have agreements in place for those things. Sorry.
No, along the lines of a delegation or subcommittee, would it make more sense to have 2 or 3 members of this, 1 or 2 or 3 members of this committee join the select board subcommittee? I mean, to work together
The pilot?
jointly?
I think they'd welcome that. Tony Farrington said he would be very, very happy to have whatever help we were able to
That
provide.
just seems to make more sense.
I thought we
Yes.
talked about it last time, and there was possibly an issue with then something coming in front of us.
Right.
Oh, right,
That
sure.
there is
The
the issue where we can, which is one reason why I asked them to
Can't
come and
generate.
talk to us in a forum that the town can also hear.
You know, it's
Because
inter-
we're on, we're out there in TV land now. So, I mean, it would be interesting to me, if they were to come, to have the rationale that they have shared with the select board subcommittee with us. so
Those
that we
subcommittees
can-
have to be open meetings anyway, but that's a
Yeah.
separate issue.
I
But
think
they're
that-
not, they're not all broadcast, so there's, yeah.
One thing that Select Board Member Farrington said that stayed with me was that there's a perception that Milton is a wealthy community, and why are you coming to nonprofits for money? And I don't know if that's shared among the three of them, but maybe a role that we could play is to give them a very clear understanding of our objective, after our examination of the budgets, our objective position in terms of what the real need is.
Yes.
I think that would
Definitely.
be productive.
Oh, it would clearly be a communication that would go both ways. I mean, I don't know that they're all aware of some of the things that we see. I don't know how many of them look at the town budget. I would dare say that as many of them look at our budget as we look at theirs. So,
Right.
Right.
you know, they're not sitting there fat, dumb, and happy either, just raking in money. They have to balance budgets as well. John?
I think what Kathleen Cass has said, a lot of people don't realize that they're putting kids through the school system and only paying 138 grand.
Or if that, yeah.
so-
I agree with that, yeah.
I agree with her, it's gotta be more out in the open.
I don't
Too bad
disagree.
Hank Phillippe Ryan can't come and do a story on it.
Well, if she did, it'd be an eye-opener for
And
some people.
then, for a question for you, Mr. Hart, are the hospital plan doing a big expansion?
I can't speak for the hospital, and I have no idea, but I don't know that it's appropriate for me to be talking about.
I understand, but if they do, can't they put stipulations for,
That's up to the zoning board. I mean, they can ask for a
Might be a
lot
start
of different
there.
things. There are a lot of things they can do. That's an interesting question. Scott?
Have we found out from town council what fees we can legally impose upon?
They are working on
They
it.
are
I
looking
have.
at it. Okay, that's being done, so we just don't know yet.
That is in the works. That's one of the subjects that really needs to be fleshed out. I mean, obviously, we can't call it a tax, but fees are different things, and if they can be levied, that's so much the better. But I think there's the question that we will bring up, that the select board will bring up when we start talking about this sort of thing, because they have to originate it. We can't.
I'm personally of the opinion that talking and talking and talking to these people, you've been doing it for years.
Oh, we've been talking a lot.
And I think we gotta figure out what we can do legally
Right.
and do it.
Yeah, I don't
That's
disagree.
Personally, why waste time on,
I don't disagree at all. I
and
think
you just,
that
because the longer this goes on, the hope, the longer you're not gonna get any money. And I think they've already shown their hand.
Well, I think that there's something that we can do, and I think this conversation, believe it or not, has really kick-started other discussions that are happening in other departments of the town that are along these lines, which I think could be productive. I hope they'll be productive, because the issue for us is, yes, Milton is a wonderful town to live in. It's not a bottomless money pit, though. We don't have the resources that other towns of our size do, because we don't have a commercial base. We don't have we don't have hotels, we don't have shopping malls, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So our base is very limited.
but they chose it that way.
Yes, absolutely. There's no question
And
about
if you
that.
hear the trend,
Yeah.
shopping malls are done.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. There's no question about that. But, you know,
Target is down.
we live in a town that has kept its character, whether it's by accident or design, it has kept its character, and I don't think anybody's complaining about that, but there's a price to be paid for it, and we all do it with relatively high taxes. But if there is a component of the town that can contribute above and beyond where it has been contributing, then there's a moral obligation, I think, at some level that has to be assessed and realized and admitted by the people who have been beneficiaries for as many years as they have been.
But on the other side of that theory too is, people are saying if that wasn't institutions, there'd probably be homes, more kids in the schools, more schools.
More tax revenue, though.
Taxes.
All right, so
I don't think the tax revenue would balance out, would be in the same position we're in now.
we don't know. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe, maybe. But it's a subject we really still have to pursue. Scott?
Was there an issue a while ago where Curry College was getting water for free from the town?
I can't say. I don't know.
It was Curry, I think it was
I
private
don't know.
residences.
I would be
Because
surprised
we
if
had
that
a
was the case.
shortfall of water, I'm thinking they found that that's where it was going.
Oh, really? I can't speak
On
to
the water
that.
bill with the we had a deficit with the MWRA.
Yeah, I can't speak to. That predates me.
I'm just
so I
trying to
can't.
recall.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a lot that we still have to do. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, I think the 9 non-budget articles have been circulated. Please take a look at them before our next meeting, because at the next meeting we'll have Chief Grant and the firehouse. I'll ask for the firehouse construction planning committee to come as well with the chief. And we'll hear about what their requests are going to be, because we're coming into a situation where they're going to have to start putting pen to paper.
Are we gonna have the school planning committee come as well?
We can have them come if you would like, at that same meeting.
I
I'd
would
like to get these
know-
all done.
I would like to know where they're at.
Yeah.
Because if we voted on that at the last town meeting,
Yes,
correct?
yeah, to bring,
So,
yeah.
so they should have some.
They have something, I know they have something, but I know they're also in process, but we can invite the town, with the chief, of the fire chief, we'll have the school building and the firehouse building. I'll ask Mike Dennehy to arrange that. And the following meeting that we'll have will address the 9 non-budget articles, as many as we can, and I'll ask the planning board to come and hope that their language will have been finalized as far as it can be, so we can actually start thinking about them.
Just for clarity, confirm when the next meeting is, because I know you.
27th of February, 27th of January.
Is that the one you're going to the select board?
I'm going to 22nd. That's why,
20
that's the Wednesday before that. And
okay, so
next Monday is Martin Luther King Day, so everything's shut down.
We gonna accept the minutes?
I'm sorry, thank you very much. I failed to do that. We had the minutes circulated, the last meeting. Are there any changes anybody see? Chair will have a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Motion to accept.
So we have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you for reminding me.
Two sets of notes.
It's
Was
two
there two
sets.
sets?
Yeah, there was two
Yeah.
You're
sets.
meeting with the select board about just like an open conversation.
Yes,
Island?
exactly
No?
right.
Okay,
Yeah, exactly right. It's an exchange of views.
gotcha.
And I think that it'll be interesting to hear how they feedback as well, because I think they have issues as well. I'm sorry,
Do we want to discuss the letter?
Christine's letter?
did you
Did I what?
Is your letter?
Letter you drafted.
Yeah.
Letter you drafted.
I put together what we heard from
Yeah.
Select Board Member Farrington, whether we want to leverage that at this point in time, whether people felt it hit the right tone, gave the right information. We will not hurt my feelings, it was just a conversation starter. But I don't have a strong, I actually, hearing that this has kind of gotten the select board going, and maybe we will get the executives in, maybe it's not something,
We want to
lever
hold,
we
we
wanna
want to
pull
just
right
hold
now.
on to it for a little while.
For the record, I liked it.
Yeah, no,
Nice
I'm
job.
sorry, it was very, I thought it was very well done.
Yeah.
I do think that, like, I started polling people, like, do you know anything about this, to people that aren't involved?
Yeah.
And it is an issue.
Yeah,
Is it?
Yeah, I don't think that it's I think there are a lot of things about the revenue side of town that aren't talked about a lot.
yes.
I agree.
But I don't know if that, right, in this moment in time is the right mechanism. We'll
Yep.
save it.
Right.
Hang on to it. I think it will be, it's a tool that we can use. I think it would be very interesting, but as these discussions are going to happen quickly, it may be something that we can use sooner rather than later anyway.
And I tried to make it as factual as possible
Yeah.
without
Yeah, yeah.
emotion,
No, no, it's
so that
fine.
people would start talking about it,
Yeah.
Right.
because
Well,
it's complicated.
and I thought it was well written, but let me, the one thing that was missing is sort of gets into my point. There's nothing to mention that as a technical matter, they don't have to do anything.
They don't have
No.
to do
And
it.
that
That's
and
right.
that was the only thing
They're
that was missing
IRS
from the letter.
exempt.
And something that I want to caution this group on is public shaming, like we don't, as a warrant committee member, I don't want to be a leader in that. I mean, we're not there. The select
Yeah.
board has chosen not to public shame these people. Yeah,
I
for
don't
me,
just,
I'm out on that. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Well, I do not, as the warrant committee member, want to be taking the first step into pushing the Milton Times to shame these people. I just think it's,
Okay. I understand that.
you know, it was very interesting when I was writing it, to look at the public reporting from Boston, because people contribute to various levels.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it would be very interesting to understand how Austin got there. And why some people are okay with saying like, I just can't, and you can kind of see that it's the, for BU to be called a nonprofit is a bit of a joke.
Well, given a lot of their
Seems pretty,
operations.
though, I
Yeah.
would say,
Yeah.
But then you get into some of the museums and whatnot, and you can start to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with Jonathan. It's a tool, it's something that maybe we want to leverage at some point, but
But
Just
the
a-
town will put a lien on someone's property and put it in the paper.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's the difference between them.
Because
or the
they
average
have to
citizen.
pay.
That's a
Because
lease.
they have to
I
pay.
understand, but I'm just saying.
That's required
I'm
as a
just saying,
legal
it's a big
notice.
step, okay,
Yeah.
and let's just, for the sake of argument, we vote, great letter, send it to the Milton Times and they publish it. And you got this, I mean, don't we wanna run something like that by the select board? I mean, I want them to be like, guys, you've disrupted years' worth of work without.
No, I don't disagree. No, I
Right.
don't disagree at all.
Yeah.
This is one
Tony
reason.
was
But at
here
the
during
same
that part of the
time-
conversation.
But at the
They're
same
not
time,
blind to
somebody
this.
has
I
to
watched
do
it on TV.
something, right?
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that you're going to talk to them,
Yeah.
because we can't do nothing.
Right.
And I would love to somehow have it not be public shame, but public information.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think we want to embarrass these people.
No,
I mean, I know these people, and the last thing I would want to do is have them, think that, we are doing something bad, and they come and they spray paint our houses or something like that. I don't think that that's what anybody's interested in. And I don't think that's the objective
I
anyway.
mean, I will tell you, I watched the meeting on TV, the tone is, I just wanna caution everybody, the tone is just.
Which meeting?
The last meeting, I was sick, so I watched the meeting, I mean,
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, people came across like they were coming after Tony. It was very,
Well, there was a lot of surprise and disappointment, I think,
Yeah.
that there have been these conversations, they just haven't gone anywhere.
It's
And,
aggravating.
yeah, I mean.
no, I understand that.
And to the point, this body is obliged to find a way to make everything balance.
Right.
And when you've had requests that are not unreasonable made to institutions which ostensibly can do something to make the pressure on the town's budget better, and you get silence, it's frustrating. And so, we're not good. We're not printing the money here in the basement. So it has to come from
I don't
somewhere.
disagree
Right.
with raising the issue or highlighting the issue, but I would just be a little more.
Okay.
I
We'll
agree.
take,
It makes negotiations that much more difficult if it's a confrontational.
no, and we don't want to be
attitude.
confrontational.
And
at
Mr.
all.
Boynton has been
Yeah.
doing this for a couple of years. He came before the committee before when we were over at the Council on Aging, and we reiterated that this is their IRS status. They don't have to do anything.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have very little to compel them to do it. So it's a negotiation, and hopefully we'll get eventually an agreement,
Yeah.
so they don't keep asking them. We'll have a multi-year agreement,
Which would
and
be
we just
nice.
follow that.
Which would
We
be
don't
very
bother them, they just
Yeah.
keep to their agreement, and everybody gets
Everybody's happy.
a little bit
Yeah,
of what they
there was
want.
there was a lot of great ideas raised, stuff like, I think one idea raised was, to have them, chip in and help us out with some of the facilities.
Sure. Yeah.
A lot of things that just seemed more collaborative.
Collaborative, good word. John?
Yeah, but I don't think it's unusual to ask Milton Academy to go over and take care of Churchill's Park. It's not a big park.
Right,
And they take care of their grounds impeccable.
beautifully.
So it's not a big deal for them to do that. That's what I suggested. But I'm gonna say too, Home Inc. and Fuller could be nonprofit too. And they chose to pay taxes. Those two organizations. They're not paying the full taxes, but they're not got kids in the school. They pay for their own plowing and everything, but they get rubbish. And they have to put the $3 thing on. But those individual groups, when they built it, came to a resolution, they'd pay so much in taxes. And they're a nonprofit.
Well, there's a lot of nonprofits within the town.
I'm just saying, those two individual, Marvin Gordon was on both boards, and he agreed they'd pay taxes.
Yep.
So it can be done.
Yeah, they come to agree to do it. There's a
But
lot more than just the big
When
three
they bought
in town.
houses,
They
Yep.
took them
Curry,
off the tax
Milton
roll.
Academy,
Yeah.
they were supposed to leave them on the tax rolls.
Right.
Yeah.
That didn't
Because
happen.
they went after Milton Academy for pilot, they appealed to the tax,
Yes,
to
Abatement.
take the houses off the tax levy.
yes.
So they're not honoring their deal.
Well,
Well,
it was a war.
after
That's a
my
big
con-
complicated issue that was-
After my conversation with the select board, I will report back
Okay.
to you all, and then we'll decide at that point what measures can or can't be done. We, again, cannot initiate because we review, and it would be just an incredible conflict if we initiate it and then say, send it back for us to approve. We can't do that. That's just not right.
And I think Tony, you know, Jonathan, I didn't watch it on TV after it because I sat through it. But I think Tony also is at a level of almost like, what do we do now?
Yeah.
And
Very
I
frustrating.
don't know what that answer is, and I don't think that the intent of the letter was ever to shame anybody. I truly do believe that the citizens of Milton, if you just read Milton Neighbors, just read it, people don't understand what is going on and why the taxing and the zoning is what it is within the town. If we were to hold an educational meeting at town library and actually have some of the citizens of Milton come and learn about what it is that we're grappling with, not just us as a warrant committee, but as a select board. I mean, I think Tony, to be honest with you, was like, whatever you guys want to give me as another tool, please. If that means, great, they're going to take care of the park, how much does that take off of DPW's expenses? I mean, there's got to be
There's a give.
a way that we do
Offsets.
this
Yeah.
that in such a way the citizens understand it, because all people are talking about, you know, is why are my taxes going up? And they don't understand the bigger concept. And nonprofits, just so everybody's aware, is also all the churches within the town. There are, I don't know, 25 churches in this town. It's astronomical how much grounds and how much space is being taken up by a lot of nonprofits, including town property. So I think that we just need to, you know, obviously educate more people, educate our neighbors, but I also think that the board of our warrant, or the chair of our warrant committee, should go out and try and help in any way that he can, to kind of add that extra layer. So I thank you for going to this meeting next week. I
Happy to do it.
appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing.
We all are working for the betterment of the town, that's it. So I think that whatever we can do that's going to be positive and constructive, because this is not, we're not sticking pins. We're trying to come to a solution that's going to be beneficial for all of us. And I think that's the
One thing
objective.
you should bring
Yep.
into comment, I think there's major, could be some sort of conflict of interest if we were to sit on some sort of subcommittee, because it just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, it's just a potential voluntary revenue source. I don't know why that would be
Yeah, no, I
a
understand.
conflict for somebody on, you know, if you want to vet that idea.
Yeah.
It would just, 'cause I think that was a great idea.
Yeah, we can do that. If there is nothing else, and I don't think there is anything else, we have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in
Yeah,
favor?
yes.
Thank you very much.
Aye.
See you in 10 days.
Have that land, I know.